Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. Before we get started, I want to remind you that you can support Attendance Bias. You can go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate anything you can manage. You can also leave a rating or a review of the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, on to today's episode. Are you shopping for car insurance? Are you invested in the drama of an elevated dining Chicago restaurant? Have you been scrolling Netflix lately and come across a new show called Free Bert or the adult cartoon Chicago Party Ant? If any of the above is true for you, then you already know today's guest. Actor Chris Witaske, who you may recognize as the guy trying not to become his parents in the Progressive TV commercials. You may recognize him as Pete in the FX show The Bear, or you may recognize him as the villain on Free Bert with the exquisitely chosen character name Landon Vanderthal, is also a huge Phish fan. He and I were lucky enough to sit near each other on New Year's Eve 2025, and we had the greatest time watching a bunch of Broadway-style milk cartons dance across the stage of Madison Square Garden. By the time the third set was over, Chris, myself, everyone around us, we were all reminded of what we already knew. Phish is incredible, and we are so lucky to see them at another peak of their career. I got in touch with Chris a few days after New Year's and asked him if he would be interested in basically nerding out about Phish for an hour based on a jam of his choice. In other words, would you want to come on my podcast? He was immediately game, and after a bit of discussion, he asked if Tweezer from New Year's Eve 2025 would be a little bit too on the nose. That was immediately followed up with a message where he said, "It's so good." I obviously want my guests to tell us about whatever show or whatever jam they want. And after a few re-listens, it's clear that this 30-minute Tweezer from New Year's Eve 2025 is a bona fide classic. It's one of the jams of the year, and Chris had so much to look forward to in 2026 that it was an auspicious start to the year. It's a great long jam, but there's so much more to it than just the music. But let's hear it from Chris. He and I talk about deep dish pizza, high fidelity, and having too many options in a Phish calendar year as we discuss Tweezer from December 31st, 2025 at Madison Square Garden. Chris, welcome to Attendance Bias. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, buddy. I'm very excited to be here.
My pleasure. I'm excited to have you here. So glad you were able to make time to come on to the show to talk about a whole melange of topics. We got Phish, we got your career, we got, I'm assuming, a lot of Chicago and the Chicagoland area. So a lot to cover today. For the benefit of the listeners, you're here ostensibly to talk about a fairly recent jam, Tweezer from New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2025 at Madison Square Garden. And as I read those words, I'm taken immediately back to when I was listening to it and the whole experience.
Same, dude. I went to two of those shows and it was a great little run. It was special for me, which we can get into. But that Tweezer is a banger and I can't wait to talk about it.
It is. It's the sort of thing, it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome. It's one of those Phish jams that I loved it in the moment, but the more I listen to it after the fact, the more I love it. Like I fall in love with it after I first heard it. And the more I listen to it, the more I hear in it.
Dude, same. And, you know, while it was happening live, there was, of course, a lot of shit happening on stage because it was part of the gag. It wasn't until I put it on while I was back in Los Angeles driving around and had it cranked on my car stereo when I was like, oh shit, this is like, wow.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. It's quite dense, but always enjoyable. And speaking about always enjoyable, before we get to Phish, before we get to the lightning round, let's just touch a little bit on your career as an actor. So I would imagine most people listening to this podcast would be familiar with you as your role as Pete on The Bear as Carmi's brother-in-law. Also Netflix / Judd Apatow series, Love. And my favorite, Chicago Party Ant, also on Netflix. Most recently, Free Bert with Bert Kreischer on Netflix. But I would even suggest, and tell me if you agree or disagree, most people listening to this might not know exactly what I'm talking about, but anyone who was watching the NFL playoffs this past season saw you almost every 2.5 minutes during a commercial break as the guy being coached not to become his parents on the Progressive Auto Insurance series, like the Dr. Rick series.
That is right. I've been in a lot of those now. And I think I've been in like maybe 20 different spots. And that has been a good gig for me over the years. Yes.
They're really funny. You know, my father was in advertising when I was growing up, and I remember he would come home like almost pitching us, like me and my brother, his two sons, different ideas for like different products. You know, I don't know how seriously he took it or if it was just his way of telling us about his job, but that's how when I see commercials, that's kind of how I think about it as an adult. And it's like, that writing is spot on, and your performance and the performance of your partner right on.
Thank you, man. Yes, I agree. They also let me improvise a lot now because, that's kind of my background is, starting at the improv theaters in Chicago. And so they now kind of trust me to, come up with stuff on my own too when we're shooting it. And I always say it's nice to be part of a campaign that's actually funny because, there are some commercials that are trying to be funny and they are not. And can even be, slightly embarrassing. But this one I feel like is genuinely funny. And so I'm, proud to be a part of it. I also tell people that I'm just doing an impression of my actual father in those commercials. So
yeah, no, you draw from life. It looks like it.
Yes.
Before we get to the bear, though, I must ask you about your show. And when I say your show, you are credited as a co-creator of it, Chicago Party Ant, which is an animated series that's streaming on Netflix currently. IMDb lore says that the show is based on posts from your Twitter account. So I have to ask, I've never heard that one before. How does a series of Twitter posts sell as a TV show?
When I moved to LA, I was looking for kind of a creative outlet because, Chicago, where I was for like 10 years, you're performing all the time and you get to be creative a lot. When I moved to LA, I kind of didn't have an outlet. So I created this Twitter page called Chicago Party Ant, where I would tweet as if I were this wild woman living in Chicago who's based on a couple of my actual aunts. So yes, it started just as a thing I was doing for fun. And then it started to gain traction. It started to gain followers. And the next thing I know, a production company was coming to me saying, hey, we should turn this into a TV show. And that's how we got 2 seasons out of Netflix show.
It's amazing that they approached you about it because it feels like a passion project when you're watching it. It feels very personal. Like this had to be someone's real experience. The fact that a production company came to you must have felt great.
It was so great. It was just something I was doing for fun. I was just coming up with these stupid jokes, and putting them through the POV of this woman who I know a lot of women like this growing up in Chicago, aunts. And, I worked at Mike Ditka's restaurant in Chicago for many years. And a lot of these kind of ladies would come in. So yes, to then have it turn into a TV show was amazing.
So I'd love to hear your impression, not your impression, but your thoughts on this. For anyone listening, if you haven't heard of Chicago Party Ant, or you are just scrolling on something to watch for Netflix, to me, as the unprofessional television critic that I am, I saw it as kind of like a cross of Big Mouth and the 1990s John Lovett's vehicle, The Critic.
That's great.
Hear me out, because The Critic had like a sarcastic but absurd, or sarcastic and absurd and lovable sense of humor. But the added layer that I loved is that there was like thousands of inside jokes for New Yorkers. Yeah. And Chicago Party Ant gave me that feeling because it's absurdist, it's hysterical, but there's a layer of Chicago references, like her apartment is right outside of Wrigley Field, right in Wrigleyville.
Yes.
So it was probably extra funny, kind of catering to people from Chicago.
It was exactly that. And it was, yes, packed full of Chicago Easter eggs, maybe even too many. It was funny when we first got our like numbers from Netflix. They were like, well, everyone in Chicago is watching it. But then, outside of that, not as much. But yes, that was our goal, was to pack it full of as many Chicago inside jokes as we could. And I think we succeeded.
Well, you were successful. Highly recommended to anyone listening. It's an easy watch. It's a funny watch. I love laughing. It's the best. So, but let's move a little bit higher profile. So, in regards to The Bear, which features probably the best ensemble cast on television right now, I would suggest you must be preparing for the fifth season.
Yes, in fact, just finished filming the fifth season. I was just in Chicago for a while, and yeah, so I just wrapped filming the fifth season, and they're gonna. The rest of the cast is going to be done here in the next couple weeks, and I think it'll come out in June. That's not officially announced yet. Yeah, man, it's so great being a part of that show.
Of course. For any attendance bias listeners out there trying to spot Chris in The Bear, his character is Pete, wearing a t-shirt, by the way, in the last season with a very recognizable logo on it, the Nectar's t-shirt. I have two questions for you. One, is that something you have to run by wardrobe, or do they, like Progressive or whichever advertising agency, give you leeway for that?
So that was me at one of my wardrobe fittings saying to the wardrobe gals, don't you think Pete might wear a Phish t-shirt in one of these scenes? and they were totally like on board and jumped on it. And so they went around and scrounged up a bunch of Phish t-shirts, but then we had trouble clearing the Phish logo, but then we landed on Nectar's, which I think is even better because it's way more of an Easter egg for Phish fans. And I think if he were wearing, like the Phish rainbow logo, it might have been a little too on the nose. So it worked out perfectly.
Did you know that there's an entire thread in the Phish subreddit titled "Pete Wears a Nectar Shirt"?
Is there really?
Yes. And
I did not know that.
And leading up to this conversation, I call it research, but I was really just scrolling Reddit.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of excited posts, like maybe 10 to 15 really excited posts. And then it devolves into like inescapable sarcasm, like lots of Reddit threads,
Of course.
But it was also reported by NBC5 in Burlington. Pete on the Bear wears Nectar's or features
I heard.
Nectar's
I did
t-shirt.
see that. I did see that. That was great.
So you made it. You control the media.
I control the media. And also I was hoping that, because I know Nectar's is I don't know if it's officially out of business or if they're just kind of taking some time off, but I was hoping that somebody would see this and buy the damn place and keep it open.
Yeah.
Trey, maybe perhaps Mr. Anastasio.
So your most recent project, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Free Bert on Netflix.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Free Bert.
Yes. So this is a show that just recently came out on Netflix, and it stars the stand-up comedian Bert Kreischer, who is also a jam band fan. I didn't know him at all, but went down to Atlanta to film this show, and I play kind of his rival in the show. He plays a version of himself where he is a successful stand-up comedian, moves his family to Beverly Hills, and his daughters enroll in this fancy dancy private school, and then he, as kind of a more blue collar guy, has to try to fit in with these rich Beverly Hills douchebags. And I play one of the douchebags.
You play the lead douchebag, I would suggest, right?
Thank you. That is right. Landon Vanderthal is my name.
Yeah. As a smarmy millionaire plastic surgeon, by the way, just to pile it on.
That's right, buddy. I got to say, it was fun. This was the first douchebag that I've played in a while, and it was actually a lot of fun to play a douchebag.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you used the phrase rival. I saw you as like a foil. Well, I mean, you are the villain, right? You are the bad guy in the show, but You're mostly the foil because, as you said, Bert Kreischer, the character, even maybe same for the comedian himself, blue collar, big guy, very like hairy and got like a, walks around with his shirt off and he's got the 5 o'clock shadow all the time. Your character is rather slim. You're always very well coiffed. You're always coiffed. You're always wearing like sweater vests or polo shirts or something. So It must have been fun to play off someone to whom, at least physically and as an actor, you're the complete opposite.
It was exactly that. I described a lot of the wardrobes as Miami Vice-esque, a lot of pastels, and and so it was a lot of fun to get to play the foil, as you say. And I have some of the most ridiculous lines. They put me in some of the most ridiculous scenarios, and it was a lot of fun to do it.
So Free Bert on Netflix, check it out. Highly recommended half-hour comedy show goes down easy and very fun to watch with everyone, I would say. Talk about ensemble casts. Everyone pitches in real well on that show. Chris, let's take a look. We got a little bit of background about your history. Let's learn who you are as a fan. Let's drop all the professional work, and we're just talking Phish now with the attendance bias lightning round.
Attendance bias lightning round.
Any chance to nerd out about Phish, and I am there, buddy.
Well, here we are. This is it. So, Chris, what was your first Phish show, and what do you remember most about it?
Okay, so I just looked it up just to make sure I had the exact date right. My first Phish show was August 8th, 1997, and it was at the New World Music Theater in Tinley Park, Illinois.
So before you even tell more about, I have to ask, I've heard so much about Tinley Park. I first became aware of it from that 93 tape. I think It's August 14th, where they kind of did this crazy Run Like an Antelope. Is it a theater that has terrible sound?
I think if you're on the lawn, yes, for sure. But I think if you're down in the pavilion, it might be better. But honestly, I mean, this was such a long time ago, and I was on a lot of drugs, and so
never heard that before.
I just remember it being the greatest night of my life because I was seeing these guys for the first time and was like, "What the hell is this? I have to see this as much as I can."
What did you know about Phish going in?
Definitely had all the some tapes and CDs. I was, a lot of guys in my junior high were into Phish, and so I had Hoist, I had a live one, I had Rift. I'm trying to think what else I had by that time, but I was definitely listening to them a lot. But then going to this concert, it was just, I remember it was like getting hit upside the head with a 2x4, and it was like, this is the greatest shit ever.
Any recommended jams from that show or particular songs?
So I remember they opened with Cars, Trucks, Buses, which was fun. They played the Lizards, the third song, which I remember hearing that Lizards melody. And it was like, that really was when I was like, oh my God, this is so great. And then I think they definitely played Loving Cup. The Limb by Limb was great. And then they encored Hoochie Coochie Man with Sugar Blue came out on harmonica. And that was great.
Of course, you're in the Chicagoland area. Got to have blues, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what's your most recent Phish show, and what did you think of it?
So my most recent Phish show was the show that we're going to pick apart here was New Year's Eve, just the most recent one at MSG. And it was a very special. I went to two shows. I went to the 30th and the 31st. And it was special for me because it was my kind of last minute makeshift bachelor party. Because I got married just recently in January 10th. And so I was able to sneak away for two shows for a bachelor party. I also brought my best friend and writing partner to his first Phish show on the 30th. And it was just a very special couple of nights for me.
What did he think?
Oh, buddy. So this guy, George McCullough, great dude, huge Bruce Springsteen fan, huge music fan. He has been making fun of me for being a Phish fan for our entire friendship and has never gone. And so as a bachelor party, I was able to convince him to come. And a couple songs in, well, I shouldn't say a couple songs into the second set, when the drugs kicked in, he turned to me and looked me dead in the eyes. And he said, "I get it now." And
that's the best feeling in the world.
The best. It was so great.
In 2016, I was at New Year's Eve with my friend Robin. I think that was the Petrichor New Year's Eve gag. And we were behind the stage, and it was so crowded that she and I were standing on like the stairs at the end of the row. And she was enjoying it the whole time. But there was one point, it was after the New Year's gag, so it was late in the show. And I just felt this huge slap on my shoulder, and just she's a loud person to begin with. She's always down for a good time, but I just feel this huge like pounding on my shoulder, and she goes, "Amazing!" And I'm like, "Got her,
love it." She's the best, the best. We hooked another one. We've reeled another one in.
So moving away from Phish, maybe not necessarily Phish related, but part of the lightning round, since you've mentioned Chicago so many times, it's kind of your home base.
Yes.
What is your favorite Chicagoland area concert venue? Big, small, or otherwise?
Great question. I think what I have to answer is Alpine Valley in East Troy, Wisconsin, which is, a little bit of a drive outside of Chicago, but that venue really holds a special place in my heart. I love the setup of that place. I love that you feel like you're out in the woods. The shakedown is always great. And then the venue, the way that it's like the pavilion is made out of old wood. And you think about how many times the Grateful Dead played there, and it just feels, it's a very Wisconsin feeling. I've made many great memories at that place.
That's awesome. I got to get there. And Deer Creek. Like before I
Yes.
die, there's like a certain list of formative or necessary Phish checklist venues. For me, I've never been to Dick's because as a teacher in New York, school starts the day after Labor Day.
Oh,
So that's
shit,
always tough
right.
to swing. So
Right.
it's like Noblesville, Alpine Valley, and Dick's. I got to make it happen at some point.
See, I'm the same way with East Coast venues because, there's a bunch that I haven't been to on the East Coast that I really want to hit. And Dick's I went to for the first time a couple years ago, 2 years ago. And man, that shakedown is like lawless. It's like the
endless,
Wild West.
right?
Oh my God. It is like the Wild West. Yeah.
Quite literally,
Yes.
if according to Phish, the West Coast is Denver, Colorado, in the middle of the mountains. All right,
Yeah.
staying on the Chicago theme here, and this is really more for me than the listeners. Sorry, everyone. Chicago-style hot dogs, legitimately good, or meant for tourists, or somewhere
Oh.
in between?
I love them. I think that they're legitimately good. I think that if you are a tourist, you have to have it. I think the argument you can make is that deep dish pizza is more for tourists than is for locals. Because a lot of Chicago locals eat thin crust or tavern style pizza,
Right.
as opposed to deep dish. Yeah.
And final non-Phish question before we wrap it up to get to Phish. Best Chicago movie, since you're an actor, best Chicago movie, and side question, does The Dark Knight count as a Chicago film?
Ooh, I'm going to say yes, it does count because whenever you're in Chicago and you're driving on Lower Wacker,
That's it.
whoever, if you have an Uber driver or anybody, they will make it a point to tell you that this is where they filmed The Dark Knight. So yes, I'm counting it as a Chicago movie. I grew up on some classic comedies, so I would probably say Blues Brothers is like maybe my favorite Chicago movie. Also, actually, it would be a tie between Blues Brothers and High Fidelity. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Have I ever seen it? People in
Love
college
that
used to
movie.
make fun of me because I would just recite it. It was like Jack Black was the greatest actor of all time, even if he retired right after High Fidelity.
Right? Agree.
It's
hard
incredible.
agree.
And it hit me because I was about 17, I think, when High Fidelity came out. And
Oh, yeah.
I was going through my whole emotional, like listening to Pinkerton by Weezer when I was angry because I got it, the whole world's against me. And that's kind of the vibe put out by that movie where it's like, oh man, like my list, my top 10, I got to figure out what's wrong with me. And it's all,
Heartbreak
everything
and
is
all.
based on music.
Totally. It's so great. I actually rewatched it recently and it holds up.
It
I
does.
showed it
I
to
was about to ask.
my
Yeah.
wife. Yeah, it holds up.
All right, good. That's good to know because I haven't seen it in a hot minute, and that's a good movie. And the book
Great
is
movie.
great too. Nick Hornby is an excellent writer.
Oh yeah, I should read it. I've never read it.
All right, to wrap it all up, let's pivot back to Phish. This is the question I ask everyone of the lightning round. What is the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show?
I was at the Chicago, I think it was United Center show where somebody thought that a guy gouged his eyes out. Have you ever heard that story?
I remember seeing it, like rumors of it on social media. Yeah.
I remember like at Set Break or whatever, people were like, a guy just gouged his own eyes out. And I remember walking down the corridor and I saw like blood smeared on the wall. I remember being like, holy, this actually happened. This guy gouged his eyes out. And it turns out that isn't what happened. Something, some guy was bleeding, maybe had a bloody nose or something like that. But of course, and then, a game of telephone at a Phish show, you suddenly hear that a guy has pulled his own eyeballs out of his head.
Oh, Jesus. Can you imagine that on a head full?
Do you have a weirdest thing you've ever seen?
I do.
Let's hear
So It was 2016. It was this July 2016. It was at the Gorge. So have you ever been to the Gorge?
No, that's very
Okay.
high on my list. Yeah.
But it should be number one on your list. It's an amazing venue. It feels like a festival because it's so hard to get to. Every time you think you're almost there, you're not. You got to go for a while longer. So if you could picture the outlay of the Gorge, I'm sure you could imagine images you've seen,
Yes,
right?
of course.
Pictures, right? So there's an enormous, picture it as a lawn, right? And then you go to the front of the lawn and you have to kind of go down a little slope before there's like a concrete sidewalk. And in front of the concrete sidewalk is more like the seated area. Okay, so it's like any typical shed, but it's just on a much larger scale. Okay, so I'm on the lawn, and to get to the restroom, I was closer to the ones near the seated area. So I told my wife, I'll be right back. I head down, I go on the sidewalk, and I make a left. Now, all the way to the left of the lawn, overlooking the sidewalk. It's hard to picture without showing it to you. Most of it slopes down. Part of it does not. It stays elevated. There is a guy literally chained to the fence, standing on the very edge of the hill, dancing his ass off, like sweating buckets, going crazy, eyes closed, arms akimbo, like flying everywhere, going nuts. And he could lean forward as hard as he wants because he's literally chained to a fence like a guard dog in a junkyard.
This is great.
Meanwhile, as a postscript, I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I try to bring in little fruit snacks in my pocket, like to every show, just in case I have a low blood sugar. At the Gorge that year, they told me I had to leave them. I couldn't bring it in, couldn't bring in extra food. Meanwhile, this guy is somehow able to bring 10 feet of chain and is able to tie himself, himself to a fence.
So he can lean and dance and
without a shirt. So there's metal against skin. I've seen some weird stuff. That is the weirdest thing. When you break it apart piece by piece, that's the weirdest thing I've ever seen out of this show.
I hope that guy's doing well wherever the hell he is.
I'm sure he is, because if he could manage that, he could manage anything.
He might be dead, though. Let's be honest. He might be dead.
That's true, too. It's one or the other.
When was this show played?
So we are here today to talk about Tweezer, which was in the third set of New Year's Eve 2025. A couple days after this New Year's Eve show, my friend, you know him, Josh, from the Stub Me Down podcast.
Of course.
You've met those guys. They
Great
say
dudes.
hello. Yeah, awesome guys. Josh and I did a recap, like a 4-night recap. Here were some of my impressions of the New Year's Eve run. So not just this show itself, not just New Year's Eve, but overall the run. So the 2025 holiday run was the usual 4 nights, December 28th, 31st. I would say, judging by social media, mixed to positive reviews. I went to the last 3 nights. I almost always skip the 28th. And I thought it was a really even run. And oddly, I thought New Year's Eve was the best of the 4, because that almost never happens. People usually pump up the 29th or the 30th especially, right? But this year, I thought the 31st was far and away the best. Some of the takeaways I had was that 2025 was almost like an extension of 2024 without much change in direction. Like the band leaned on extended jams that could come from anywhere, most commonly Tweezer, What's Going Through Your Mind, Ruby Waves, A Wave of Hope, and Hey, My Friend, Song of the Year 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
The band's name and specific members showed up in really high profile publications, like on podcasts, extended magazine interviews. They won the fan vote in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've still been able musically, they stick the landings of big jams, and they impress me with their segues that they haven't really done since like 1994. Really impressive callbacks during a set where, I don't know, maybe the 6th song in, they're playing teases from the 2nd song of the set and, or bringing cheers out and being like, oh, right, they did that already. So I feel like all that could have been said also about 2024. So I thought 2025 was like an extension, more of the same in a good way, because it's all good stuff. The only exception was that 2025 was the first calendar year in Phish history, according to Zizix, if you know that guy, Dave Steinberg, that the band did not debut any new material. No new songs in
Wow. Is
2025,
that
right?
true?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's true.
Huh.
So it's weird because the name Phish is more mainstream than ever, but the shows still always feel like our little secret.
Agreed. And I
You
love
know?
it.
So what was your 2025 Phish like?
These two shows were great. They were really special, bringing my friend and having a little bachelor party. I thought the gag was great and fun. I think they're on a different level, man. Like I go to these shows, and maybe it's because I'm getting older and more sentimental, but I find myself like crying at shows more and more. Like I'm like I can't get over how great this freaking band is and how they just keep rewarding us year after year. I'm trying to think what shows I went to in 2025. Was this the Sphere was a couple years ago, right?
It was the previous year, 2024.
Right, that's right. So I did go to some shows in 25, but I don't remember exactly where they were. But the Hollywood Bowl shows. Hollywood
Right.
Bowl.
Yeah.
Great. So fun. So I mean, I agree with everything you just said there. I just think that like they're like elder statesmen now, you know. I just am trying to be as grateful as I can that we still get to see this band and that everybody's healthy and that they're still going out there and giving it their all and doing these big, blissful jams where I find myself tearing up at the concerts. I'm so happy to be a fan of this band.
Yeah, no, me too. And I don't think you're alone. I do think that the band themselves are becoming a bit sentimental. For years, for decades, it was if we already did it, we can't do it again. We can't do repeats. Like it's kind of central to the Phish ethos, right? Even set lists, night to night. We can't
Yes.
can't repeat. But now, I would even say that since COVID, I would say what a lot of fans call 4.0, they are constantly referencing their past. Always and always. They are always going back to what they've done before in new packaging. Like we'll talk about in a minute how the beginning of this tweezer was pretty much the meat stick jam
Right.
from 2010,
Right.
but in a new package, right?
Yes.
And they do their I think we're in the year or the era of the talkback mics that they can hear each other now, and their playing is so much smoother than it had been in a long time. Instead of ripcording and going into backwards down the number line, now they are returning back to the song that they started.
Excellent point. And I think that they are letting it air out and just having confidence that they don't have to ripcord and just trusting that something will come if they just kind of, let it breathe. I think it's the patience of guys who are in their 60s, who have been doing this for 40 years, and they just have this trust now that's built up over, decades.
I agree. And I think they're also something that I haven't spoken about on this podcast yet. I think they're starting to become a little bit aware, if not concerned, about their legacy.
Yes.
I think that's what all the media attention is about. That just doesn't happen, with GQ, with Mike Gordon and the Mark Maron podcast. I don't think that just one day they decide to do it. I think they want to make people aware. They spent most of their career saying, we're doing things on our terms. We're great. We don't need any mainstream media attention. And now they're like, oh, maybe we should. Like there's something of value there. This whole 100 shows at MSG coming up this summer, they're blowing it up. That's not nothing.
Yes. Totally fucking agree. And I am here to tell you that they deserve it, man. Like they
100%.
fucking deserve it. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they just don't even understand what this is. Like I feel like we need to take whoever the hell the panel of judges is and bring them to a show and have them stand in the front row and have them realize, holy shit, there is no more rock and roll band. This is fucking rock and roll, and they are carrying the torch of rock and roll, and they are doing things at these concerts that no other band is doing. And I don't know what the hell it is with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Maybe they just haven't had that experience, but like, yeah.
I think it's an ego thing. I really do. I think it's that this band didn't give Rolling Stone much attention. They didn't
Right.
they didn't pay their dues in quotes. Those of you listening, making quote marks with my fingers.
Right.
And now they want us. Well, we're the media giants who control the industry. We're the ones who vote. Oh, a little late, guys. So that's just
Interesting.
my take on it, knowing nothing. That's
Yes.
just the way I see it.
Let me ask
But
you a question though, real
yeah,
quick, about if we were to be analogous to the Grateful Dead when the Grateful Dead came out with Touch of Grey, and all of a sudden they got all these new fans, which I heard old Deadheads called them touch heads.
hmm
Um, and all of a sudden, these gigantic football stadiums were sold out in, minutes, and there were frat boys trying to climb the fence to get into the concerts. Do you think would you, I guess my question is, would you want that to happen to Phish? Has that happened to Phish?
no, and sorta. That definitely hasn't happened to Fish because I have a feeling like this coming summer of 2026, when they play 5 nights at Madison Square Garden, I think it'll be a soft ticket market. I don't think they'll be able to sell out 5 nights at
Really?
MSG. Oh yeah, when they play on a Wednesday night in the middle of the summer. I mean, there's always tickets for summer tour. They play Deer
Yeah.
Creek, you're always able to go. So I don't think it's as impossibly crowded. And I'm speaking from someone who is 13 years old when the mega dead, like Touch of Grey experience happened. I am not speaking from the first person point of view,
Yes.
but that became outrageous. I don't think that Fish is there. At the same time, every time I go to a show, I feel like the crowd is getting younger. And
Yes, I
so
agree.
I think there's like renewable fans, almost like fandom of Fish is a renewable resource. Like they're never going to run out. So I
Yes.
think that there's always an expanding fan base, but I don't think we've reached what I guess we could call critical mass in the way the Grateful Dead did, where they had to write an open letter to their
Mm,
fans saying, hey, behave.
yeah, right. Right. Stop
So it's somewhere
tearing
in
down
between.
fences. Let me ask you this. Do you think that the reason that, as you said, some shows haven't sold out on summer tour, do you think that they're doing too many concerts? Do you think between Mexico and the Sphere and a festival and then a bunch of summer tour dates and some spring tour dates, do you think that there's just too many shows that Phish fans can't afford it?
Yeah, I was gonna say no to you until you hit that last point. I don't think they're playing too many shows because they're playing something between like 38 and 44, 45 shows a year, which is not
Okay.
anything crazy for
Right.
any band. But when a ticket is like $150 a pop, and
Right.
we are not in the most affordable of times, no
Right.
matter what class you're in or how much money you make, it's
Right.
still recreational fun. I hate to say this, but I do think there's a law of diminishing returns when you're paying that much.
Yes.
And it's also,
Yes.
it's just the nature of the game. It just is. I think that for people who are determined enough to go, I think there's always a ticket to be found.
Yeah. Agreed. It is crazy. I think what was it, a couple years ago when we had to we had to choose. You had the option of, you could go to New Year's Eve at MSG and they'll do Gamehenge. You can go to Mexico and do an all-inclusive Phish vacation for 4 days. You can go to the Sphere, where they're the second band ever to play this insane venue, or you can go to Monday Green, which is their first festival in years, at this gigantic place. It was like, what the fuck am I supposed to pick?
Well, that's the thing. Fish has become less about touring. They've become more about setting up camp.
Right.
And when I
Right.
say camp, I really mean a hotel room, or, you're not necessarily in our 40s or so going to crash on your buddy's couch for five
Right.
nights. That's a bit much to ask a friend,
Yes.
even though I
Yes.
would do it and I would allow
Yes.
someone to do it at my place.
Yeah.
But I think it was 2023 and 2024 that you're talking about, where it's like,
Yes.
no, you don't come and you don't see a show in Chicago in one night and then Alpine Valley, and then you go a little bit east to maybe you're not
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
like 3 shows in 4 nights anymore. You're seeing 4 shows in one place that you
Yep.
had to pay well over $1,000 for,
Yep.
take vacation days, and maybe be in the rain for 2 or 3 out of
Right.
them. It's
Right.
an investment more so than a tour these days.
It is, man. So for those years, I went to Monday Green and I went to the Sphere, and I chose to skip MSG, and then of course I'm couch touring, and they started on Gamehenge, and I'm like, no.
It was one of the greatest nights of my life.
Was it? Yeah. I believe
Yeah,
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's everything. I had that feeling that I have occasionally. I'll say maybe once every 4, 5, 6 years, depending on what they play. But there's occasionally after a Phish show when I walk out and I say, why do I have to keep going? Why
Right.
bother? And I felt that way in 2013 after the Jump Truck set on New Year's
Yes, I
Eve.
was there. That was
Yeah.
great.
And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is the closest I'll ever get to a Gamehenge show, or the closest they basically, because New Year's Eve, they always have this theme of time and warping time and shaping time and going back in time or moving forward in time. And the Jump Truck set, I believe my read is that it was their best example of a time machine. Right? They did the
Yes.
Gamehenge time machine New Year's 95, but in 2013, it was like, we're going to recreate as best we can what it was like to see us in in Nectars, in Hunts, or whatever it was, because in Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people. Trust me,
So great.
19,900 people of you were not there.
The microphone stands were hockey sticks.
It was the
Remember? Yeah.
greatest. It was
So
the
great.
greatest. And they opened with Glide, which is my favorite song. So
So
I was
great.
sold right away. But yeah, I think that we are in.
Dude,
I,
how do
I,
they keep? I mean, like, because this New Year's was so great with the milk, the dancing milk cartons, and I mean, it was so great. I'm like, how are they going to continue to raise the bar? They find a way to do it, you know?
my thought is always, if we can think it, that means they won't do it.
Yeah,
They,
right.
because if what do you think they're going to do? This past year, it was everyone thought it was going to be a transportation theme, right? Because of
Oh,
the
everybody, it's going to be a subway theme. That's what
yeah,
everybody was saying before the show.
nope. If you can think of it, it's not going to happen. That's why the Baker's Dozen was such a hit, because
Yes.
we knew it was going to be somewhat themed, but the amount of detail they put in, and now people are already speculating about this upcoming Madison Square Garden run. Oh, are they only going to play songs up to 1992, 1993, 94? Because that's the 90s. It's like the
Oh,
92nd,
interesting.
93rd, 94th show. And I said,
Oh, I
nope,
hadn't heard that yet. This is great. I like this.
it's Schrodinger's box. If you say it out loud, that means it won't happen.
Do you have so what would you predict they're going to do for their 100th MSG show? You have no idea.
Good Lord. I'm going to be there. I'll tell you
Yeah.
that. I'll find
Yeah.
my way there.
Yeah.
I can't. It's too big for me to even think about right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. My favorite would be if they did in like an all barbershop quartet of songs written 100 years ago from like the 1920s. I think that would be the
Hilarious.
best, because it would disappoint so many people.
Yes, it would.
And that's, I think, their sense of humor. I think that's what they like, defying expectations.
We're so lucky to be fans of this band, man. They're so fucking
They're the
great.
greatest.
They're the
They're the
greatest.
greatest. So let's take a look at this Tweezer that was played on December 31st, 2025.
Hey, and this is the night I met you, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We were very lucky to find ourselves in a very comfortable position from which to be watching the show. And there were several times that you and I, in the middle of a jam, and I remember it specifically during my friend, just all looked at each other. It's just like wordlessly making eye contact and being like, what is happening? I don't know, but I love it. I introduced myself as Brian, and my wife, Michaela, introduced herself as Brian's wife, and you immediately riffed, there must be more to you than that. She turned to me and goes,
I said, you're more than just Brian's wife.
Yeah. And she goes, see, he's an ally. That's who he is.
Right. That's right. Your wife was so great. And also they played Waste that night, which was going to be our first dance song for our wedding, in a couple weeks in the future. And I burst into tears, and your wife put her arm around me and said, you guys have the lyrics up in your bedroom.
Yes,
and,
true.
And yeah, it was a great moment.
Yeah, the show, like I said, I thought, in my opinion, was the best of the run. They played Tweezer right in the heart of the third set. So it was right after the clock struck 12, and they played Auld Lang Syne. It bucked tradition, because newer songs tend to be the New Year's song, right? It's always the most recent, the most fun they have jamming, like Say It To Me Santos or What's Going Through Your Mind. But this one is a 30-minute monster. It kind of provided the glue between the ice cream gag silliness back to mind-melting psychedelic silliness.
Correct. What my thought was, they had done Gamehenge, the year previous, and so it was kind of like, well, what songs can we grab onto for this year? And the whole gag started with Harry Hood, which is what set the kind of dairy theme. And then in my mind, it was like, well, they did all the Gamehenge stuff. So now it's like Harry Hood is such a good anchor. And then Tweezer is such a good Phish anchor.
Yeah, and since there were no new songs this year, they didn't have one, so they went back to the oldest jam vehicle, right? The most reliable one. About a minute in, they were recalling the meat stick gag. I mean, we already saw it visually from the gag. It was set up exactly like instead of hot dog vendors, now they had ice cream vendors from different countries and nations and ethnicities. But now they're singing, instead of Time for the Meat Stick in different languages, now they're singing Won't You Step into the Freezer? And the crowd was loving it.
I love that they are playing off of old stuff now too. I think it's all part of the canon, and they should just. I love that they are taking old shit and making it new. And I mean, I rewatched that meat stick gag a lot. It was one of my favorite. I wasn't there, but it was one of my favorite of all time. I watched it recently and I started crying because I was like, I love this band so much, and this is so stupid and great.
Yeah, you're very sentimental.
I am, man. I've been crying a lot lately.
When the jam starts in this tweezer, Trey just noodles like a simple melody. The rest of the band holds the rhythm down, which is tweezer. Like, you could describe anyone that way. But this is why the band can jam this for 30 minutes. And you said this earlier. They're not in a crazy rush to go anywhere. It's very relaxed and calm. But Trey eventually speeds up. Nothing too intense. But then it's reminded me of like 97 funk jams when they just let it chill for, I don't know, what feels like 20 minutes, but it's really 90 seconds. Yep. The crowd just roars. They're here for it because of the patience of this band.
Totally.
They move to a major key, which then ends up with this big bliss jam, complete with meat stick teases on guitar. And like a lot of Phish gags, this has become a big New Year's Eve at Madison Square Garden in-joke. Yeah, if this was someone's first show, like your buddy, it might go completely over their heads. They might still love it. But what's going on? There's so much to dig into It's like watching an episode of Twin Peaks or something.
Yes. I love that you said Bliss Jam too. Bliss Jam is like my happy place.
Yeah.
Like those words, Bliss Jam. It's like mother's milk. It's like that's where that's like it's like being held in a cocoon of pure light and love. And oh God, I love it.
Yeah, and they found their place. They know when to turn it on, and they know when to make it complete, like amoeba, formless, crazy psychedelia, which they did. I don't know if it was the night before or 2 nights during Split Open and Melt, which was
when they drag you to hell. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A little bit about a third into Tweezer, about 10 and a half minutes, they shift into this like bluesy boogie woogie kind of groove that Page is centered on. And I don't know exactly the keyboard. I don't have that vocabulary. It's very retro groovy. It's almost like they took Little Feat and just pushed them into 2026, and now it's Phish. Like that's exactly where my mind went. Like it sinks into a quieter mode with Trey actually taking a back seat. I was really happy that Fishman and Mike were kind of working together, the rhythm section.
Yes.
Not always the case.
Agreed. I also love the Little Feat shout out. I love that Phish loves Little Feat, and I love that I love Little Feat because of Phish. And so that was a great shout out.
Yeah, always. Oh, anytime I get the chance, I will shout out Little Feat.
So great.
And then they get quiet. This is what I was thinking when you and I were just speaking a little earlier. I can picture like 2011 or 2013 Phish at this point at about 16 minutes, awkwardly transitioning to Backwards Down the Number Line or Ruby Waves. No shade to either of those songs, but just kind of letting Tweezer go. But they don't here. In 2026, technically, right, Phish lets it simmer, and they wait for someone to take the lead. Trey is not the one. He plays rhythm, and then Page is playing softly. So it's like, who's it going to be? And by 20 minutes, oh, it's Trey. And Fishman is going nuts.
they could have easily ripcorded, like you're saying. They could have easily had an awkward transition into another song. I think about that with the Tahoe Tweezer a lot. Is there are these moments in the Tahoe Tweezer where they could have awkwardly transitioned into something and it would have sucked, but they didn't. They just sat in it and kept it going. And, that's why we have the greatness of the Tahoe Tweezer as well, because they didn't, yes.
And that's what's so great, or one of the, you and I are just going nuts here about the greatest things about Phish, but one of the greatest things is their high risk, high reward when it comes to improvisation. Like so many bands would chicken out and be like, this isn't going anywhere, let's play the next song. They don't do that always. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's just the nature of improvisation, right? I know you worked with, was it Second City or the Groundlings?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Right? That Second City, right? And sometimes it doesn't work, improvisation, right?
A lot of times it doesn't.
Right.
Yes. But without any risk, there cannot be any reward. Without any darkness, there can't be light. And so you have to take those risks. And, luckily for us, this band has 40 years of, trust under their belt where they can do that, which is so great.
Right, and we are all the beneficiaries of it.
Yes, we are.
We're starting to close in toward the end, like 26 minutes, right? So I'm already thinking during the show, by the way, this feels endless. This feels like no one has anywhere to go. It's the first opening minutes of 2026 of the new year. We're all looking at each other, hands up, the big lights are up. So to us, this has been going on for a month and a half, but we're 26 minutes into this jam. We know now, looking back in retrospect, it's going to end within 5 minutes. But Trey uses the notes. He engages the notes like he does in Harry Hood very often. Let's go of it. And then it's more guitar-centric boogie woogie. Like the 26 minute timestamp, I'd listen to this all night. I find myself, this is my favorite Phish every once in a while. I said it at 26 minutes. This is my favorite Phish.
Yep. Same.
Yeah. And then to back it up, to end it all, they start speeding up. They go into double time. They start just emphasizing the one and more of the same style jamming, just with a little bit more pep. And did you hear this? Fishman tries to go back into Tweezer at about 29 minutes and no one else is interested.
Yeah, no, thank you, Phish. We're still,
Like the whole band isn't interested. Like Mike is playing in a minor key and like they're kind of just in this mush that eventually explodes into an incredible 20-minute Piper.
The Piper's so great as well.
So I want to ask, to wrap up this discussion, you chose this for attendance bias. You've been seeing this band since 1998. Was it because it was so close to your wedding and it became like an impromptu bachelor party? Is there more to it? Have you expressed it already? What's so special about this jam to you?
All that, yes, but like I said, sometimes I find that when I'm at the show, I'm so lost in it, and I know I'm just living in the moment and letting this wash over me. But sometimes it takes me then going home and listening to it on live Phish to be like, oh shit, this was like. I mean, I would put this up there with the Tahoe Tweezer. This is like, there's so much bliss in this jam. On re-listen, it's like, oh, we heard something special that night. It was great.
And it's so cohesive. Like the whole thing, yeah, it's a half-hour investment to really listen, right? But it feels like it goes by in 3 minutes.
Totally. It was interesting because my friend came on the 30th. He wasn't there this night. But sometimes when you bring new people to Phish for their first show or whatever, this is what they complain about. They're like, well, that one song went on forever. But for guys like me and you, this is the best part of the show. This is by far the best part. It's not like, oh, I heard, bathtub gin for the 40th time. It's like, no, they transported me into a different place where I was fully in the moment listening to these amazing musicians improvise, and you get transported. And it's like, there's nothing else like it. I think there's nothing else like it in the world, man.
Yeah. And no one else has been there before, including the band.
Yes.
There's that. And then in this specific case, there's also the rush of it being a new year. There's a rush that it's Madison Square Garden. And trust me, talk about the phrase attendance bias. It's like my second home, basically, the amount of times I see Phish there.
Yeah,
It's on another level. Yeah, everything you're saying, I agree with. They could have played this at the Man Music Center or Camden on a random Tuesday, and we would still be gushing about it. But there was just something elevated about this version. I'm with you on that.
Totally. And then also you look on stage and there's all this goofy shit going on. There's guys coming out of freezers and shit and people singing in different languages. And it's just like goofy shit. It's so, in fact, I don't know if you see the shirt. I'm wearing a Late Night with David Letterman shirt.
Yeah, I do see it. Yeah.
My friend Brad Sands, who used to be the Phish's manager, made a great analogy that I love that stuck with me. He said that the Grateful Dead are like Johnny Carson and Phish are like David Letterman. And that analogy to me is so great because it's like David Letterman took all the stuff that Johnny Carson did and then he made it just even weirder and sillier and more fun. And I feel like Phish did the same thing with the Dead, where they took what they were doing and made it even more fun and evolved it. They're funny, man. They're so funny. There's like
yeah, it's the best. Chris, thank you a billion times over for making the time to come on, for really nerding out. If I could get paid for this, I would quit my real job tomorrow, but I really love not just asking you about your career and referencing all these different TV shows and stuff and commercials. It's the first time I got to do that on this podcast, but really nerding out, like really digging deep and not stopping the conversation. Because I love when you ask me questions, it makes me think and kind of flummoxes me. Whereas usually I'm the host and I like putting the notes together. I like being challenged. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to talk to our listeners on Attendance Bias today.
Buddy, I had a blast. Thank you for having me. And I would just like to say once again, we are very lucky to be fans of this band.
And that's it for today's conversation with actor Chris Witaske of The Bear, of Free Bert, and much, much more. We covered a lot of ground today, but it's not all just about acting. We got to make sure we got everything right when it comes to Phish.
Attendance bias fact check.
On Google, currently, Nectar's as listed as, quote, temporarily closed with the dreaded red banner. The venue's website itself is active, although no events are listed on its calendar through February of 2027. Social media posts from Nectar's dated from July of 2025 state, quote, Nectar's will no longer occupy the space that helped shape the soul of Burlington's music scene. While our time at this beloved address is coming to a close, the spirit of Nectar's will live on, end quote. Chris's first show at Tinley Park on August 8, 1997 may not be as widely circulated as the 1993 Tinley Park shows, but it should be. The first set has 7 songs and the second set has 6. Plus, Gumbo, It's Ice, Wolfman's Brother, Free, Limb by Limb, and Chalk Does Torture are all in the Phish.net jam charts. The encore with Sugar Blue is absolutely worth a listen as well. Chris names Alpine Valley as his favorite Chicagoland area concert venue and cites that the Grateful Dead played there many times. For the record, the Dead played Alpine Valley 20 times between 1980 and 1989. The infamous eye gouging incident, in quotes, was during the October 13th through 15th, 2023 run at the United Center in Chicago. There is a video widely circulated, at least I saw it on Fantasy Tour, from the October 14th show of a man running around with blood all over his face. A rumor very quickly spread that he was on PCP and gouged his own eyes out. The true story ended up being that a man who apparently was on drugs did run full speed into a wall and bloodied his face before falling into a merch table. When Chris asked my opinion about whether or not Phish has reached a similar point as the Grateful Dead did toward the end of their career, my answer was no, and I referenced an open letter that the Dead wrote to their fans. It was sent out after fans tried to, and successfully, gate crashed the fences at Deer Creek. The letter was dated July 5th, 1995. It's widely available with a simple Google search, and it reads in part, quote, "Dear Deadheads, this is the way it looks to us from the stage. Your justly renowned tolerance and compassion have set you up to be used. At Deer Creek, we watched many of you cheer on and help 1,000 fools kick down the fence and break into the show. We can't play music and watch plywood flying around endangering people. The security and police whom those people endangered represent us, work for us. Think of them as us. You can't expect mellow security if you're throwing things at them. The saboteurs who did this can only do it if all deadheads allow them to. Your reputation is at stake. Don't you get it? Want to end the touring life of the Grateful Dead? Allow bottle-throwing gate crashers to keep on thinking they're cool anarchists instead of the creeps they are. Want to continue it? Listen to the rules and pressure others to do so. A few more scenes like Sunday Night, and we'll quite simply be unable to play. The spirit of the Grateful Dead is at stake, and we'll do what we have to do to protect it. And when you hear someone say, 'Fuck you, we'll do what we want,' remember something. That applies to us too." End quote. And it's signed at the bottom by all touring members of the Dead at that time. The letter is much longer and much more in-depth and thoughtful, but that's the general gist of it. I am really glad that Phish has not yet reached that point. Getting back to Phish, when Chris and I discussed the current touring state of Phish and how much it costs to see 4 nights in one location, he mentions the Sphere, Mondegreen, and the Gamehenge Madison Square Garden run were all in the same year. His point holds for sure, but Gamehenge was on New Year's Eve 2023, whereas the Sphere and Mondegreen were in 2024. The gag the previous year, New Year's 2024, was the weird Conjurers of Thunder / Pillow Jets of Sound techno remix, not the Gamehenge gag. Although that can be forgiven because New Year's Eve gags have pretty much stood still since the band decided to bust out the Gamehenge Phish Mountaintop in 2023, it's kind of hard for me at least to keep track of what was when because 2023 stands alone. The crazy psychedelic version of Split Open and Melt that Chris described as, quote, "dragging you to hell," was played on the previous night of New Year's Eve, December 30th, 2025. And finally, toward the end of our conversation, Chris brings up the Tahoe Tweezer. Just in case you don't know, the Tahoe Tweezer was a version of Tweezer that was played on July 31st, 2013 in, well, you guessed it, Tahoe, Nevada on the state line. It is a 36-minute monster full of inventive jams and various themes that weave in and out of it throughout. It is widely considered to be a turning point of the 3.0 era and is mandatory listening for all Phish fans. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Chris Witaske for joining me today, Phish.net for their help with the fact check, the Mockingbird Foundation for everything they do to help support children's music education, and Phish.in for the recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show. You can leave a rating and a review of it on your favorite podcast app. You can follow Attendance Bias on social media, and you could go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate anything you can. Every penny helps, I promise. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.